What are you waiting for? Hurry into your dealer or visit mercedes-benz.ca before our fall sales event ends.
Good to have you with us on this long Labor Day weekend. We are talking about the federal election, and we're about to enter this second phase now, in all likelihood as of Tuesday, once the Labor Day weekend is over. Still 6 weeks, by the way, 6 weeks of this to go. The Conservatives have a lot at stake here, of course, after winning 3 back-to-back elections, 2006, 2008, and then finally majority territory, of course, in 2011. What's interesting is when we look at these polls, and again, remember, polls 6 weeks away from a vote are only so useful, but nevertheless, they do give us a bit of a glimpse of where people say they are at right now. Polls show that it's still pretty much an equal race here between the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Liberals, with the NDP and the Conservatives kind of going back and forth a little bit, the Liberals sort of coming up there in the middle. All right, we started off earlier in the program talking to Joyce Murray, Liberal MP, who's trying to win her election once again in Vancouver. We then went to Quebec. We spoke to Anne Lagacé-Dawson with the NDP, who is trying to win in the riding of Papineau. I want to end things off this hour by going to Ontario, to the riding of London West, where my guest is Ed Holder standing by. He is a Conservative, has represented the riding for a number of years now. Ed, welcome to Viewpoints.
Todd, thanks. Great to be here.
I want to ask you this, Ed. You know, your party, the double sort of strategy here, stay the course in terms of what's going on with the economy. The economy has been such a calling card for the Conservatives for many, many years. Also security as well, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But on the economy, Ed, we got some bad news this week. Yes, Canada was in a recession in the first half of this year, and also those job numbers, some Stats Canada showing the national unemployment rate went up to 7%. What does that do to your message here on the campaign trail about your record on the economy?
Totally reinforces, Todd, the issue that jobs in the economy are the key points in this election. Look, we're all Canada's not immune to the global fragile international economy. And so we have to be sensitive to what's going on. So when you see what goes on in Greece, when you see what goes on in China, you see what's happening with the impact that's had on our oil resources and that industry there. Frankly, you appreciate that this is an interconnected global economy. And it just reinforces that when we talk about the need to have a strong, steady hand on the economy, it's absolutely critical. Let me give you some other parts of this, if I can. And that is that in terms of Canada, and even in my own city of London, Ontario, 10th largest city in Canada, by the way, John, if you didn't know.
I did know, yes, of course.
Share that with listeners. It's really important to me. But look, we've had good job numbers that have come out. Interestingly, while, for example, in London, Ontario, the unemployment factor went up a touch. In fact, we added 2,600 net jobs in London this past month. And since the economic recession of several years ago, we're getting upwards of 20,000 net jobs that have been created. So what it means is that the job numbers are strong. When you look at the figures in terms of Canada, you'll see that June's numbers are exceptionally strong. In fact, at the end of the second quarter, Canada now has a $5 billion surplus, and that's well ahead of projections. And I will tell you that the banks across Canada, Finance Canada, are very optimistic about Canada going forward. So I think people are right to be concerned about jobs in the economy. That's what I hear at the door, and all the more reason to have a steady hand that knows what they're doing with respect to how to assist businesses, job creators, in growing that economy.
My guest is Ed Holder. He is the MP for the riding of London West, now currently, of course, campaigning to win again. Why won't Stephen Harper say the word recession, though, Ed? I'm curious.
Well, here's what's interesting, and I mean, you'll have to ask the Prime Minister why he would or wouldn't use the word recession, but I would tell you that when probably if I had to speculate some, and I'm mindful of doing this, but only because when people put recession or something like, say, the R word out there, it sends tremors to certain people, and frankly, when you look at what's happened in terms of the second quarter, and you look at the numbers that June has produced, we actually have a pretty good track record, but part of that, Todd, has to be the confidence that people feel about the economy. So if one wants to play politics with it and put fear into people, that they hold on to their money and they don't spend, or that they don't make investments that they should for fear that somehow things are going to get worse. In fact, that's not the case. If you look at how the numbers are trending now, in fact, in the way that the banks are projecting, we are going to be in a strong position. We balanced our budget, and the interesting thing is when you balance your budget, what it does is it gives you as a government the opportunity to help families balance theirs. You've heard the Prime Minister say that, and it's really quite true. When you put yourself into deficit, which is what certainly what Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals are confirming that they're going to do, and when I see Mr. Mulcair, what I look at in terms of his spending that he hasn't priced, my concern for the Canadian taxpayer is that we're going to get high taxes as a result of deficit, which adds to debt. And what they don't seem to understand is that when you run a deficit, what that does is that just adds to that larger debt that you have to ultimately manage, and that's a responsibility that the federal government must do as well. We have to manage the economics of the country, and the Prime Minister has provided a steady hand with this.
Ed Holder is my guest, Conservative MP representing the London West riding. Ed, one other question I've got for you too. Stephen Harper has been Prime Minister, as I mentioned off the top. We all know this, since 2006. Now that's almost 10 years. You know this. Some of the polls out there show voters who want political change. So, question for you: how does your party, how do you as a candidate, how do you give voters out there who say they want change, how can you realistically do that if you're the party that's been there for almost 10 years? Can you do that?
Well, the party's been there 9 years now, and we've only had a majority now for 4 years. We're asking the Canadian people to give us another majority so that we can continue on the economic course that has created some in excess of 1 million net new jobs since the worst recession in our lifetimes. And I want to just touch on that for a second, because when you imagine the worst recession that Canadians have experienced since the Depression, and the reason we made the kinds of financial commitments that we did in terms of infrastructure, as we did in conjunction with G7 countries, industrialized countries around the world, was to avoid a depression. Frankly, we've done exceptionally well. Our banking system is strong. We've created some 1.2 million net new jobs. In the 4 years that we have had a majority government, we've worked through to the point of balancing the budget.